Hey Wizards, so I'm late to the game on this one, but it seems like in this world, there's so many people that are totally okay with taking just like basic electronics and wrapping it in a 3D printed shell and then charging you like $2,000 for it because it's just night vision or it goes on a helmet. I don't know why those two words, night vision or helmet, means you're probably going to pay an epic ton of money for, I don't know, basic level electronics. But I think we have something interesting we're going to show you here today, because even Brass Facts brought this up, that at this price point, this performance, and with the controls, and we all may need to collectively sit down for this one, you actually get what you're paying for. Plus, I think this is a huge part that most people don't even talk about. It has no glaring faults. Like even on the Designate IRV, that unit is $2,000 and has the most brain damaged control knob I've ever seen. But that Illuminator I'll give you my take on and show why I think it does so well for so little is the all new holosun Iris 3. So yes, this is the Iris 3. There is the new Iris 4 that has white light and everything built in. For our ranch, like that guy's way cooler than me, so he'll probably have a video out on the Iris 4 if you want to keep an eye on his channel for that one. But we'll talk a little bit more about how to integrate white light into this system too, and some cool things you can do with it. Before we get too far though, I want to corral us into the context of what are we going to be comparing this Illuminator into, and like what box we're going to put it in. And interestingly, I put a poll out to you guys all to ask you what you think your Illuminator should be able to do, like what ranges it should be able to operate on. And interestingly, an overwhelming majority of you guys said 0 to 200 yards. After getting to test and see so much of this different stuff and to try it out and see what's good and what's bad, I'm absolutely there with you. I'll even say that IDing a target with a set of 1x nods at 200 yards is still pretty difficult, but you may be able to work it out. At least we're not the guys talking about trying to shoot at 400 yards that are eating the box after they finish their cereal. So for this whole video, we're going to look through that lens that you guys all agreed with me is probably the most proper, that 0 to 200 yard lens. And I think you're going to see why the Iris 3 may not be the best Illuminator ever to exist, but when it's paired with a 12.5 or like a 14.5 setup, I think it really may be. I'll show you guys and I'll explain it. But first, we gotta do the sponsor thing. Today's video is sponsored by our friends over at Nocturn Industries. Nocturn takes night vision to the next level with their all-new ruggedized Talon monocular. The Talon has a swappable battery cap for any power source, along with the power, gain control, and IR illuminator knobs, all in a single position. Plus, the single Talon monocular can be upgraded to the dual knot Raptor for this crazy setup. So for the new user to the operational professional, Nocturn Industries has you covered. I keep saying this, and I really do think the new Talon is going to be the de facto replacement for the PVS 14, and I'm excited to test it out, see if I'm actually right, and show it all to you guys. So keep an eye out for that content soon, and as always, you can use discount code TLDco over on the Nocturn Industries website. I pretty much love Nocturn, but I want to always just give them some thanks. Thanks to supporting us so we can show off things like we're doing today, and for helping to keep our voice unfiltered. Now we're going to do my biases. We're going to do this fast because nobody likes this part. holosun sent me this to show you, and I think they're fantastic people. Even from a behind-the-scenes side, they were kind of like, we want to hear your take on this. We think it's pretty exciting. And that's kind of all they said. No timelines, no affiliates, no nothing. So even their more nonchalant approach to this made me like them even more. So I say that to you because I am biased, but don't take anything I say or any other YouTuber says as gospel. Everyone's biased in some way, even subconsciously. If somebody's telling you they're not biased, they're probably selling you something. Don't forget that. Do your own research so you can be the most educated consumer possible. Now I'm excited to get this on the bench because, well, most Illuminators do something wildly stupid. Like they just trip and fall at some point. Like they can't figure out how to do a control knob, like I mentioned earlier. Or like Somo Gear, they just can't figure out how Picatinny works. It's just wildly refreshing to see a fully working brain on just about every single part, even if there are some minor changes that I would make or mild improvements that I'd want to see. I'll show you what I mean as we go, but here's the holosun Iris 3. It's called the version 3 because in the front of the housing, it has the visible laser, IR laser, and illuminator all slaved together on the right side. There's also the standard cover to block the laser and illuminator, but there isn't any sort of diffuser to spread the light into more of a flood style. Now, if you saw my video on the laser speed illuminator, you'll know that was one of my chief complaints, as I think these units really do need some sort of diffuser to take that light and flood it outward so that you can actually use and operate within the 0 to 200 yard range to do both CQB and range. On the left side of the unit, though, is our battery compartment for our CR123 battery with the orientation diagram along the top. Now, if you were to get the Iris 4, this left side is where the white light would be. We'll get to this, as there's also a Viz Override button on both the Iris 3 and the Iris 4. But interestingly, on neither one of those, it doesn't turn on both the white light and the green laser. It just turns on the visible laser. And I think this is one of the last things holosun needs to solve, because just turning on the visible laser, what is that doing exactly? But it's holosun, I'm sure they'll solve it. Back on the unit, we see the Illuminator adjustment slider that gives you the ability to change the cone size of the Illuminator on the fly. The slider itself is nice and tactile to know when you're swapping settings without it like moving around and slopping all over. One small note that Brock mentioned is that in order to change this, you have to press the fire button twice so it stays on and then adjust the slider. So there is a solid argument that the fire button should be incorporated into the slider itself. After using it, I could see that argument. I think it would make it better overall. But if we're going to make sweeping changes to this Illuminator, just change the slider so the very last setting has like a flood setting. I think then you would probably have the coolest Illuminator to ever exist. The slider is pretty amazing at this price point though. Next, as we move down, we have the elevation and windage. These have a nice size and give a good audible and tactile click for each adjustment setting, which can actually be rare, surprisingly. The Iris has, and you should also gasp here, indicators to show you which direction you're moving the laser and illuminator. You would probably be just completely shocked. Like, we go to all these night vision classes, and when you go to those, you have to align your illuminators. There are so many units that have no indicator at all as to what you're doing at all. So when you do that also, sometimes when you're adjusting them, you're adjusting the laser, like where it's moving, and sometimes you're adjusting bullet impact. So be aware on the Iris 3, when you move those, you're adjusting bullet impact. So if you're just moving the laser, it's going to be opposite from what it says. That may be helpful for you, particularly if you're out there doing a infinite zero like you should, because that's way easier. Now though, along the bottom of the unit, we have another wild one, a Picatinny mount that, yay, it fits Picatinny. I don't know why so many companies can't figure this out, or maybe it's just Soma gear, but you have a tightening screw along the side that fits fine, along with having a locking lug along the bottom. Are QDs cool? Yeah, I think they're pretty cool. I think they're pretty useful, but I don't really swap many of my illuminators around, and having just that Picatinny screw mount is pretty much what I would expect at this price point. Finally, moving to the rear, we have all our controls. First on the left, we have our mode selector with Viz laser, IR laser only, illuminator only, and IR laser and illuminator combo. The right side then controls the power level with full power all the way up and down, low power, and off. The controls are also very large, making it easy to feel what setting you're in and make quick power and function adjustments. I liked it a lot because I could just run my thumb over the top of the unit and know what setting I was in, which was very useful, particularly when you're doing things in the dark. Now, you can get pretty fast with some other units, like I was pretty good with the Engol and the PEC 15, but you have to train into those. Same with this one though, you're not just gonna suddenly know what you're doing. You have to take some time, train with it, know what setting is what, so practice with that, and I particularly recommend practicing with it. I can say practice for sure. Practice with it in the dark. But the bigger levers that you can feel and move around quickly, that is a high point for me for sure. We also have a single crane plug coming out of the rear that connects into our touchpad. Now, unlike the laser speed, I really like this touchpad. It has two buttons that have two different functions. The laser speed, which this is always very confusing, also has two buttons, but they both had the exact same function, and I never understood that. And that thing was completely huge. So it's great to see everything shrunk down again. The rear button is nice and tactile, and this button fires the mode you have selected on the illumination control. But the front button, I mentioned this earlier, is our Viz Override. So no matter what mode you're in, this will fire the green visible laser. I want to caveat this here. I love seeing Viz Override functions coming straight out of the box, but I am tripping over myself figuring out how to get it to work with some sort of white light. I think the Iris 4 has a different touchpad, but has a third button that turns on the white light separate from the other two. I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't want that. I just want whatever that Viz Override button is, that crane plug, just take another one, just glue it in there, whatever you gotta do, and take that straight out to my white light. There is almost never, maybe like a 0.001 time, I don't want both of those. So I really think instead of feeding into the niche audience, make it so that they're always together and I just always fire my white laser and my green Viz at the same time. Otherwise, I'm gonna use my night vision mode. I think that's a far better solution. I don't think it's impossible to configure. holosun, I'm holding out for you. Here you go, just call it like CQB switches. There you go, it's cool guy stuff. It'll sell like hotcakes. Because look at this, even for me, I even have a RAID I could connect in, but it just puts the, I guess, third button at the back, like this Iris 4 switch, and yeah, I don't want that. All right, though, that's all of our unit and the controls and everything. Let's actually go test this thing. To show you what this thing can do, we'll be using our PVS-14 setup on our Canon C70 with our Cold Harbor adapter to capture all our static footage. And we'll also use my Nocturn Manicore R with our Brown Bear NVGR Pro to capture some first-person footage too. I think exposure camera settings can really throw off what an Illuminator is actually doing. So by doing this, I can show you, one, how it varies across different platforms, and two, give you the ability to make a better assessment as to what those changes are, as one camera is going to make it look like there's a huge brightness change and the other one, it's not quite as wild. So that way you have more data to make your assessments. I also took a look at our Illuminator reviews and realized there's no real rhyme or reason to the test I was doing. So I put things together and tests more similar to how we do plate carriers and optics and everything else. So we're not just all over the place. So there's going to be more consistency in these Illuminator reviews. So for our first test, we're gonna do the one everybody, probably the only one everybody wants, testing the Illuminator modes. For our first setting, we have our Viz IR laser. I'd say you'd most likely use this in the daytime and on a super bright day. I'm sure you could still get a 50-yard zero pretty easily. Much further than that, probably not. In the dark, it's plenty bright for anything as it's dark, and when combined with a flashlight, you can still easily see that visible laser on the center. I've heard of a lot of people using the Viz Override to zero their IR laser though. I'm just gonna warn you against that because just remember your Viz laser and your IR laser, they're not directly on top of each other. So they're also gonna be off a little bit. Just using the infinite zero, I'm gonna tell you, you're gonna have that 99.99%, repeating of course, solution that's gonna make it so much faster and easier. And you don't need all those special like reflective targets. You don't have to buy all this stupid garbage. You just aim out further and line it up and you're pretty much good to go. Now they're actually testing things, moving to the IR laser, we'll first start with low power. Here I'll say I'm super happy because it gives you an IR laser that doesn't just bloom the hell out of everything, making it actually possible to make clean and accurate shots within these shorter or longer engagement distances. Swapping to high power, there's a difference, but it's super slight. I don't mind this as we're talking 0 to 200, and at those ranges, I'd still be able to run the full length of that range, but also reach out a good bit further. When we move into the rock-eating brain damage ranges of 300 to 400 yards plus, the laser isn't quite as ideal, but I think that's on purpose. On the laser speed and the Somo gears, you have these super high-powered lasers, and I've even said how cool it is to have those and how much easier it is to see. But yeah, you can see them easier, but it comes at a cost because you have like this huge 8 MOA bloom, which just decimates any sort of accuracy you're gonna get with those. Here, I'll show you that comparison with the Somo gear NGAL so you can see a laser that's really too bright. And one of the first things I noticed on the Iris is that clean laser to, actually, make accurate shots out to these distances. Let's switch over to the Illuminator though, and first in low power, I again like the power level itself because it wasn't auto-gating my nods, so I could keep my peripheral vision, but still highlight a dark area. The low power worked well in those closer distances, but anything past 200 yards, it would get pretty lost. Now, the slider also lets us adjust the beam down, but I'm gonna say this last setting is way too tight. I have no need for this tiny circle to illuminate something I can't make out with my 1x nods anyway. I want to caveat first, I love the slider and the focus controls. But the very last setting is so tight in its illumination, like the cone focus, it's just about useless. I mean, it's not as bad as a laser speed in terms of head scratching capabilities, but I wish they changed the spread to make the beam far larger, not more focused. Swapping to the high power Illuminator though, this is a nice jump in power, but it does seem like a bit of overkill at these closer inside of 50-yard distances. When moving out, it did highlight 300 and 400 yards easily, with the focus beam really dying down, but I don't really understand why I would ever want this. And yeah, sure it works, but I want more flood for the 0 to 200 instead of trying to fight mystery blobs out at 500 yards. I mean, here, let me put up a render here. I'm gonna blow this thing up in 4K and zoomed in. Take a close look here. Can you even see what it's illuminating? And remember, I have this blown up and a higher resolution than probably your eye can even see. Can you make that out? In reality, you're gonna have this little tube that you're trying to look through, and it's not even as clear as the footage I'm gonna show you. So I'm saying, don't give me this super niche flood that maybe a small percentage of people are actually gonna use. Give me way more flood that everyone is gonna use. All right, for our last setting, we have our IR laser and Illuminator combo, and with the low mode first, and I love this. The Illuminator is useful and the laser accurate to allow you to, see and make shots. I do constantly wish the Illuminator circle was larger though. Even on low mode, moving out to range, you can dial it to the second tightest setting for the best result. The tightest is kind of screwy as to what exactly you'll be doing here. Swapping to high power, here it's all right, but inside 100 yards, it's not nearly as nice as a low power. But I love that I have the ability to swap between both pretty easily. Moving further out, the high power shines with again that second to last focus setting being great and the tightest setting not really doing much of anything. But I think most of all, I was enjoying being able to direct the beam and change it all so quickly. But every time I go back to the closer distances, I was wishing for more flood of the Illuminator. But you're really getting, if you look at this, D-Ball D2 levels of performance out of the Iris. The D2 does have a larger flood, but it's so insanely bad to change the D-Ball Illuminator throw compared to the simplicity of the Iris. I don't know if many of you got to play with it, but on the D-Ball D2, you have to sit there and just crank on it forever to try and get the Illuminator to change, and it is nothing compared to the simplicity of the Iris of just moving that slider back and forth. And the best part of not using the D-Ball D2 is now you have an Illuminator that's not just filled with concrete. I do wish the Iris would just match the D2 as the tightest cone setting though, as I think that's far more effective and would give the flood setting that I keep crying to you about. Now, one last thing we have is the Viz Override, and this is something I want to show you. If you turn on any mode, let's turn on the Illuminator. We can double tap and turn it on and then hit the Viz Override. Now we have an IR Illuminator and a visible IR laser. I have a lot of questions as to why in the world you would want this, but hey, it's there. Maybe you guys can let me know. Maybe I'm just dumb. You guys let me know down in the comments as to when you would want to use that, particularly in a white light transition kind of scenario. I think there are a lot of ways to approach white light transitions that each have some different pros and cons. And I would love to get into it, but there's just way more context to that I think needs its own whole video about that. I just don't get why I would ever want just a button that just gives me a visible green laser. I always want that to tie into my white light or tie into whatever mode my Illuminator is already doing. I just don't ever see why I would want a button that does that. So yeah, we'll talk more about that in the video later. White light later. Moving inside, we start to see that the lack of a flood setting means the 0 to 20 distance is where the iris struggles the most. I found I could use the Illuminator, much like a flashlight on the floorboards, to splash light into the room and still increase overall visibility. That's all the modes though, and I think from the laser, I think they really nailed the correct laser power to be able to use it without it blooming everywhere. I think the Illuminator is so-so, like I think it's okay. It's maybe a little bit underpowered, but I think that Illuminator could be really bumped up in terms of how much you like it if they would just make that focus control less cone and more flood, because then it would be useful pretty much all the time. Now, even with the small things I'm saying to change or the things I noticed, that's because, and this is the wild part here, I'm comparing the iris against a lot of the big boys and it's competing with them. So I'm pretty impressed by that so far. Now for the next test, we're gonna look at mounting. I talked a little bit about this before, so let me show you how to do it. Now I can't actually screw this together because YouTube will say I'm doing weapons manufacturing, but the mounting of the iris is simple and uses a standard Picatinny mounting method. I had no issues with different size rails, and I was able to torque everything down so it was securely in place without anything wobbling all over thanks to the locking lug underneath. Now, when you go to tighten this down, you may be tempted to just hand tight it, because you could do that on the knob. Please don't do that. Use the actual correct tools, torque it all down so it stays in place. Don't be tempted to leave it loose so you could swap it between units. It just will take extra time to swap from one unit to another. So that may be a data point for you if you're trying to determine if the Iris 3 is perfect for whatever platform you're going to use. Next test, I had to look at my notes. We already touched on this one a little bit too, the windage and elevation. Now with these, the controls are, God, thankfully, large enough to easily get to in the dark and give you a clean tactile feeling. Like the rest of the unit, the windage and elevation are done well, and it's better. Like, these are way better than units 3 times its cost. I love how you can adjust this with just a coin or a flathead tube. A ton of the others, you have to use specialty tools or like Torx bits. And also, a lot of the big boy ones don't even have clicks when you move things. So doing that in the dark is straight struggle bus. It is not a good time. So yeah, I really thought windage and elevation was another shining spot when I've struggled with that piece. Like, most people don't realize how annoying it can be with so many other units. All right, the next one is weight, and it does well here too. The holosun iris is small, compact, and light. And here I'll throw a battery in to check weight, and we have a total weight of 6 ounces, making it weigh almost nothing on the end of your rifle, giving you that next generation NGAL or OGL level of performance without the taxpayer gouging price tag. And the fact that it has D-ball D2 level of performance without putting your grandma's iron skillet on the front end of your gun is really, really nice. Now, the next one we're going to get into is controls, and I want to take just a minute, talk about it, and discuss here. Overall, I love the slider. I think it's what makes the unit great and unique. There is a good point made that it should have the power button on it, but the fire button on the top also means it's not that hard to get to. Now, having your thumb here does mean you're going to need some sort of riser, as yes, you can push it, but you're going to need to keep your thumb flat even with a 1.93 setup. But since you're inside a 200-yard range, in terms of what we think this Illuminator should do, you'd be far more effective if you can reach the slider. So you'd likely want to use the iris on smaller 14.5 or 12.5 setups. Why I want to talk about this? Yes, it does also have a touchpad that comes with it. But when you use that touchpad, you lose out on the functionality of the slider, which I think is far better, and being able to get to all the controls. Because otherwise, if you use the touchpad, you just have access to the Viz Override button that I don't really even understand. Now, I'll tease you a little bit. I'll get into this more when we do the white light transition video, but I would want a different touchpad, more like the one from Cloud Defensive, that has Viz Override on it, but uses the mode the unit is in and not just the Viz light all the time. With that, then you can do some cool stuff where you can use white light transition or just flip up one unit of your night vision to do some really advanced stuff that you can't really do with this switch. I'm getting off topic here, but what I'm saying is when you're gonna use the Iris 3, make sure to build it around a weapon system where you actually can have access to the top of the unit and use all that functionality. I really, really wanna foot stomp that, as I think what makes the Iris 3 so special is the controls and the slider on all that. So you really need to plan your setup out so you can actually be able to reach those things. Just setting up the Iris 3 to use the touchpad, I would say you're not really ever gonna use the functionality that makes, what I think makes the Iris 3 so great. All right though, let's move to the last category, and this is comparative market. Here, holosun does what holosun does and gives a straight middle finger to the rest of the market, giving you smart functionality without ripping you off. Unlike other more expensive units, nothing is broken and it's all well done, giving you a great Illuminator to start your journey into night vision. Is it the very best Illuminator that's ever to exist? No. And I've even shared some things that I would change or things that I would improve on it. But from someone who's just getting started or just wants to get an Illuminator that does really, really well, you would be exceptionally happy with this. So that leads me into my last bit, my final thoughts and rankings on the holosun Iris 3. To me, the holosun lives up to the hype, bringing you weight savings in a sleek housing that provides an IR laser you can actually use, and an Illuminator that could be tweaked a bit, but gives you a pretty wild versatility on the unit with the slider function. The rear controls make feeling your setting easy in the dark to make mode or power adjustments, along with a crane port to hook in the included touchpad or use one from a different light system. Overall, I place the holosun Iris 3 in A tier for its insane feature to cost ratio, along with just being a great little unit that does well at that 0 to 200 yard effective range. I did take off just a little bit for that Viz Override button on the touchpad that I never really could figure out what that'd be useful for. And I took off a little bit for having that cone size that just makes close range stuff a lot more challenging with such a tight cone on the Illuminator when it really should be wider. I bet Villain Weapon Systems is working on something, and I tested the laser speed floodhead they have here on the Iris, and I will say that I loved the results I was getting. So hopefully we'll test that out soon and see if that makes this Illuminator even more crazy. It probably will. Probably make this one of the best Illuminators on the market if you add that diffuser cap. But as always though, I like this Illuminator. I like showing you guys off Illuminators. If there's other ones you guys want to see, let me know down in the comments. I'll do my best to grab them so we can test them out. But I hope this video on the holosun Iris 3 was helpful in your purchasing decisions, and now you can know if you want to grab one of these or if you're saving up for something else. I want to say thanks to all of our YouTube or Patreon members. You make it possible we can test all this equipment, see how it performs, see where it does well, see where it does poorly, and see if it's worth your money. It's all thanks to you guys. And I want to say thanks to everyone that likes, comments, and subscribes. Comment down below what Illuminator you think can beat the Iris 3 at this price point. I want to hear about it because I want to test it because I don't know if I believe you. All right, everybody, Walsh out. Oh, you guys will stay to the end. Dude, really good. I like the holosun. I think I do like it paired a little bit more with the Cloud, the new dual switch one that you can't find because it's sold out everywhere, but it's really pretty cool. I think that mode's gonna be better. I'll show you in that content a couple different ways to do white light transitions. I think there's a few different ways that people do it, but I think there's one people are really more moving into with the mode select. Coming up, we are going to do the Radiant. We will have this review for you soon. I don't know if you saw this gem too. We're gonna have some cool stuff, not this. We're gonna have some cool stuff from Dynamic Principles we're gonna show off to you, and more pistols, all kinds of cool stuff, and optics. As always though, join our Discord. Oh, I really am. Hopefully by now, I'll let you guys know, I don't know where this is in the future, about our 50,000 subscriber giveaway. We're gonna do the whole, I think it's called the TLD, Hey TLD, Gear Me the Hell Out giveaway. I'm gonna try and set you up from head to toe, from helmet to glasses to coat, plate carrier, and belt. A whole setup. So hopefully that giveaway is still going right now. And if not, I will put it down in the comments. You guys can enter to win. Yeah, super good Illuminator though. Like this thing impressed me from end to end in that effective range. I think you guys are very right in saying 0 to 200 is the right range to be thinking. Outside of that is for crayon eaters or weirdos. The people who don't have night vision. People who don't have night vision are going to tell you to go out further, or they live somewhere and they've never served or done anything in their life. Anyway, I gotta go. All right, later, everybody.